The future of GameFreak is still up in the air even after the release of the biggest success in Pokemon game history for Scarlet and Violet. 10 million copies sold worldwide in just 3 days prior to its release date, but fans continue to wonder if what was developed is acceptable by GameFreak standards and, above all, the Pokemon company itself. Could the graphical glitch fest of experiences spark something from within as a wake-up call, or will it continue to hinder GameFreak's capabilities to produce games the way they want to? Why is this a supposed problem for the franchise of Pokemon? Well, let's take a look at what came to be of Generation 9 being the disastrous success GameFreak's had in a while. It is to no surprise that GameFreak has always been on a tight schedule to push out its agendas and get its products out and distributed by the deadlines. The recent releases clearly indicate this type of workflow, especially for the Switch releases of Pokemon titles. With overlap in production amongst games, to outright kinda just handing it over to a different company to work on it as a side project, it's clear that this cycle has been deemed terrible for practically almost any other company standards. To sit back and look at these titles produced, it's ridiculously insane as to how much they can accomplish for a game in such a short amount of time. With the 2 years in in-game development time, which has been a consistent time frame for GameFreak to work on these titles, we clearly see the struggle to identify what new aspects become improved upon and what don't. For example, the quality of life improvements to getting competitive ready Pokemon is remarkable, but difficult when needing to grind Terra shards to obtain a specific Terra type for your Pokemon. We are so close to perfecting this specific niche, but we always falter at the end. I wouldn't call GameFreak lazy in all honesty, despite what the majority of fans think. It's the simple time crunch that I believe many fail to understand. Why don't they staff more people to work on the games? Okay, done. Over 100 people worked on the newest entry. But that still didn't seem to work now, did it? Why not get better hardware to make better games? Better hardware is always the obvious go-to answer, but what good does that do if they can't properly fully optimize their games to begin with? I don't need to pull up other titles on the Switch that look pretty good for Switch standards now, do I? At the end of the day, it's the time frame needed to fully flesh out these titles. I know Shigeru Omori would want what's best for the series, but given the streak of inconsistency, how long does this plan to play out for? I'm sure the team realizes much more than we do that the game is unpolished in aspects that could have been fixed if they were just given more time, and they're not exactly too happy with how it came out, regardless of the sales results. Fun fact, some staff members that worked on Pokemon Battle Revolution worked on Scarlet and Violet in relation to the battles, but could you imagine a modern game with what could have graphics up to PBR standards for today's mainline series games in terms of battling? Just something to think about. Generation 9 had so much going for it, the fundamental basis of content being vital to determining a good game or not. I'd say it's safe to indicate that the content that the game offered without DLC so far has proven to be great all around. If you've been playing for hours on end and still haven't gotten a single gym badge, then I would say that you're having a great time exploring and collecting all the Pokemon you see for your Pokédex. With 3 different stories to complete in any way you want, and given the huge map layout right off the bat, the assumption of thinking there's a lot to do is an understatement. It really took me back to some of the goated titles of previous generations. Sword and Shield felt lackluster without their introduction to DLC for the first time in the series, and with Scarlet and Violet around, it only makes me wonder what is there to even expand upon, and given what was already given to us to play already. So when we take a look back at the development times supposedly given to making this game, it really is insane to think about how much they can accomplish with such a time crunch. Only makes you wonder what the game would have been like if it only just got at least 1 more year to cook. With the supposed DLC arriving sometime this year, I was thinking to myself the other day as to what could they possibly expand upon. I really felt like we got a satisfying conclusion after completing the game, but this is probably something that you guys can tell me about in the comments below. It's either the cut or missing content the game intentionally was supposed to have at the beginning but didn't make it due to either planning or something related to it, or it's going to be something relatively different entirely. We could be going down the route of Sword and Shield and introduce a whole new set of stories for us to tackle down. I'm led to believe that this is probably going to be the case. There are a lot of absolutely wild theories out there as to what the DLC can be about, but I'm not here to theorize. However, when the topic of DLC gets brought up, how many of you on board of thinking the game is incomplete whenever it gets mentioned? I feel like it's a case by case for all games, but on the topic of Pokemon, could it be that the DLC is a matter of giving the developers time to fully flesh out a generation they wanted to portray from the beginning? Because if so, do you think it just takes away from putting full focus to Generation 10 that is in theory in development right now? The time constraints really undermine the full potential of this series, and I hope to one day see that the agenda they can set for themselves can be changed to better suit not only the developers of the series, but the fans as well. There's a lot of talent that works on Pokemon, but I hate to see talent wasted when I know these developers can really cook up something really cool for us to see. It's only a matter of time before we will ever see a drastic change in the pace of the main series game development cycle. With this video being released, it is likely Generation 10 has already begun development, and a roadmap containing what it entails to is probably being laid out by now. This circles back to what was discussed earlier, and now to expand on that topic just a little bit, does GameFreak now realize that the shiny sound effect in the overworld, for example, is something to put in the games from now on, or not? The reason for this is, again, because of the overlap in production in previous titles, whatever became final was experimented with, as they don't know what feedback they would receive on it until later, only for it to be too late to put it into the games near the end phase of their development. Who knows what features will remain in the next installment that will come from Generation 9. Could they initially push out an update for their bug fixes for this? Yes, but I don't recall them doing anything like that for an update before. The only change that comes to mind was the shiny hunting method in Legends Arceus. But you see the continued issue with this. It bothers me that we hardly ever receive official statements from the Pokemon Company at times to keep us in the loop with things, like knowing who will be directing the games, changes in the development team, experimenting phases that they want to try out, and most importantly, hearing user feedback on everything, and the list just continues to go on. When BDSP was coming out and we saw the inconsistent display of advertisements for the game, it shows that even they don't know what's going on half the time, and it really sucks. At this point, I'm not sure if they'll ever fix this agenda, but one thing for sure is that they seem to be super consistent and communicative for their tournament events. Jokes aside on this one, but again, I really hope that this massive issue gets changed and that the Pokemon Company realizes that the result of the product sold is the awakening needed to make that change. Only time will tell. But that's all I got for you guys today. You can let me know if you think that some of these changes need to be changed overall in the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts, but that's all I got. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.